Hello, and welcome to this mini lecture on performance assessment in curriculum planning. Do you remember a time at school when you would be tested through more traditional paper and pen means? You'd study for the exam, but often not really remember much about the content you studied after you completed the exam. I, for one, used to look back on tests and exams and wonder, what was the point of that? How am I going to use that head knowledge in future? How will this information ever be useful to me? Later I realized that it wasn't that the information was useless. Rather, the way I was expected to demonstrate my mastery of the content in school was more often than not divorced from authentic real-life contexts. So how can we as teachers improve the situation by offering our students the opportunity to apply knowledge they have acquired to relatively more authentic real-life contexts? One way to take a step in this direction is for the teacher to use performance assessment. Performance assessment, also known as alternative, real-life, or authentic assessment, is a form of assessment that requires students to perform a task or create a product rather than selecting an answer from a ready-made list. Performance assessments are always built around an essential question related to content area skills that will be relevant for the student's futures. For instance, for a music student, the following would constitute an essential question related to real-life skills relevant for the future. What are the characteristics of a well-rounded musical performance? Of course, in a subject area like ELA, an essential question may be something like, what are the characteristics of economy of style in writing? Of relevance too is the manner in which performance assessments attempt to encourage learners to move beyond the mere recall of facts to actually applying higher order thinking and skills. As you can see from the table on the screen, performance assessments are not behaviorist in nature, but instead stem from a constructivist approach to teaching and learning in which the teacher facilitates learner knowledge construction related to engagement with real-world problems and activities, often requiring collaboration. Now, a good performance assessment activity description will always consist of a goal, role, audience, situation, product or performance, and standards information. Consequently, we refer to this type of assessment as a GRASPS assessment. Goal, role, audience, situation, product or performance, and standards. GRASPS. Let's return to the previous essential question. What are the characteristics of a well-rounded musical performance to see what this means? Well, if we have a goal, we'd state it as, your goal is to demonstrate a well-rounded musical performance. The role we may state as, you are an aspiring concert pianist auditioning for the London Philharmonic Orchestra. Audience we may state as, you will be playing to a panel of conservatory judges and master conductors. Situation we may word as, you will perform the first movement of Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 17 in D minor. Product, we may say, you will video record yourself performing the piece and upload the finished product to Dropbox. And then standards, we may word as, you will be assessed on tone quality, rhythm, technique, and interpretation as listed on the attached sheet. If you write up a performance assessment using this format, the requirements of the task at hand will be clearer to students, and the assessment task itself will stimulate greater interest and imagination. Of course, Performance assessments can simultaneously serve as a formative assessment of student work in process, as well as a summative assessment of the final product or performance students have created. It also lends itself equally well to both individual and collaborative work. Performance assessment in many ways then is a two birds with one stone approach. Furthermore, a GRASPS performance assessment requires a detailed rubric in order to both provide students added information regarding requirements and expectations, as well as to provide the teacher with a consistent means to determine if requirements and expectations have been met. Here is an example of a rubric structure. Note the presence of the criteria, standards, and descriptors sections. Thank you for watching. At this time, please refer to the Week 6 Blackboard assignment section on creating assessment protocol and instruments. Note that this part of the assignment is not part of the actual mini-unit plan you are developing, but is instead an exercise intended to provide you with an opportunity to practice creating assessment instruments. For this part of the assignment, you will build a mini portfolio of various assessment tasks that reveal best practices in classroom assessment related to curricular improvement. Refer to one of the learning objectives you developed last week. How will you assess that this learning objective has been met? Develop a thorough one sample assessment for each of the following types of assessment. A diagnostic assessment, in particular a selected response assessment. A formative assessment, such as a GRASPS performance assessment, and a summative assessment, such as a constructed response assessment. You will therefore create a total of 3 assessments, including the necessary standard STEM, prompts, instruments, and rubrics or checklists. Please be as detailed as you can be when creating your assessment rubrics, checklists, and other protocol. You only need to develop one GRASPS design model assessment. Here, please also revisit Macmillan's chapter on performance assessment. Also, at least one of your assessment types needs to thoroughly employ a relatively cutting-edge form of technology.